Hello, this is Brian Rowe with Mythic MTG Tech doing a White Weenie Death and Taxes Legacy Primer. This is everything you need to know to go from 0 to 60 playing one of the best decks in Legacy. I've taken this whole video and turned it into a blog post with links to all of the cards in case you want to pick up any of the cards. This has been sponsored by Mox Boarding House and Card Kingdom. I've been buying and selling cards with them for over 10 years. They are one of the best online retailers for Magic and one of my local area game stores. The core to this deck is 99% the same in all the deck lists you look at. 4 Mother of Runes, 4 Swords to Plowshares, 4 Aether Vials, 4 Stoneforge Mystics, 4 Thalias, 4 Rishadan Ports, 6 to 10 basic lands, and 4 wastelands. Unless you have a really good reason, don't mess with this core. One of the 2 deck lists I'm presenting at the end does mess with this core, and I'm going to talk about that specifically at the end. Let's run through why all these spells are in here. Stoneforge Mystic helps your fair matchup. It really gives you 4 additional copies of each of these powerful equipment. Stoneforge Mystic is a demonic tutor with a body that can carry these powerful weapons. Batterskull helps you with burn and other fair aggro matchups. Umatawa's Jite is incredible utility. +2/+2 helps you win the race in aggro. -1/-1 takes care of their pesky control creatures. It also gives you utility to kill your own creatures. 2 examples of that are when playing against Gristlebrand, you often need to chump block and then kill your own creature so that they don't gain life. When playing against Dredge, you can kill your own creatures to get rid of their bridge from belows. Sword of Fire and Ice helps you with True Name Nemesis to get through those last few pieces of damage. And this deck is very short on card draw. It gives you some much needed card draw for longer games. The next piece of the core is Mana Denial. Wastelands and ports slow your opponent down. You get rid of their non-basic, port down their basics during upkeep, and then Thalia taxes them to the point that they often can't cast any spells for early turns. Mother of Runes is the best protection from removal out there. She can stop lightning bolts and abrupt decays. Yes, giving her protection from black or green, or any of your other creatures for that matter, stops abrupt decay from destroying them. It won't stop a general destruction spell like Wrath of God, but it stops targeted removal, which is pretty much all that's played in Legacy. And then this plays the best targeted removal in Swords to Plowshare. Incredible card out there. For 1 mana, you can take out their 3 or 4 casting cost creatures, no problem. Aether Vial is one of the most misunderstood cards in this deck. It is ramp. It gets you 2 to 3 mana ahead on turn 3 or turn 4, but it also turns some of your good creatures into back-breaking powerhouse amazing creatures. Spirit of the Labyrinth is good when it stops your opponent from playing cantrips. At instant speed, it turns Brainstorm into a put 2 back on top of their deck, which is crushing. Flicker Wisp is a great card on your turn, but even better played during your opponent's upkeep to lock out some of their land. Karakas has also become a staple in this deck. Was a $35 to $45 card a few years ago and is now over $150. It protects your Thalia, but more importantly, it stops Reanimator decks from doing really unfair things, and half of the Show and Tell decks are also shut down. Omnitel still causes you some problems, but Sneak and Show is a much easier matchup with 3 or 4 Karakas' main deck. It's also important with any of these older cards to figure out what the actual wording on them is. Karakas, in its original printing, implies that it would work on cards like Jite. It does not. The new wording only allows it to work on target legendary creature. So whenever jumping into a Legacy deck, read through the current wording of all of those older cards. Basic lands are essential to this deck. Run 6 to 10, and I would err on the side of more as you're starting out. It helps you with Blood Moon and with Price of Progress. It's very important not to put fetch lands into this deck. You are counting on your ability to stay alive long enough to kill your opponent. You make your matchups against them much worse if you're taking damage from your land. Now we're moving into the flex spots here where I am going to suggest taking damage from some lands. Horizon Canopy is a powerhouse. It lets you draw a card, and this deck is very short on card draw. It also lets you splash a little bit of green. Gaddock Teague is my favorite to splash right now because he just crushes miracles. Cavern of Souls is also another way that you can splash other colors, but more importantly, you're likely going to just be naming humans to make sure that your Thalia resolves early on, or Core Artificer so that you can get your Stoneforge Mystic onto the battlefield and then use its ability to sneak in one of those pieces of equipment. Phyrexian Revoker is another one of my favorites in the flex spots. The ability to shut down even Lion's Eye Diamonds against a Storm deck is very important. Liliana the Veil can eat your deck alive, but Phyrexian Revoker stops that. With the Revoker, go through the recent top 8 deck lists, make a list of all the cards you want to shut down, and memorize those. Revoker rewards that knowledge of the game and then the skill to choose the right one during games. Spirit of the Labyrinth is another very popular one right now. If people are going to play 32 Brainstorms in the top 8, it's time to start playing Spirit of the Labyrinth more main deck. Mangora is a great win condition long term. With Karakas, you can grind your opponent out and destroy or exile each of their lands one by one. You put the ability for Mangora on the stack and then you return it with a Karakas. Very, very powerful. Sarah's Avenger, Mirrodin Crusader, and Bremoz all are competing for the damage spot in this deck. You need to have some damage in order to win the game quickly. Sarah's Avenger combos really well with Ether Vials as you can get it out very fast. Bremoz I really like because he beats both Massacre and Dread of Night from the sideboard. He also doesn't die to lightning bolts. Mirrodin Crusader is probably the best though for playing against your Tarmogoyfs and Abrupt Decays. Aven Mindcensor is very strong against fetch lands, although a little bit slow. I also like it against tutor-based decks. Cataclysm is another great way to slow down those decks that try to go over the top. And if you're going to play Cataclysm, consider a flagstone or two so that when you lose your land, you start out with extra planes in play. Two other pieces of tech that I really like is the Grunt here. I'm borrowing it from a Thomas Enevoldson, Craig Wesco deck that was designed to play against Treasure Cruise. I like it against Dig Through Time, which is very popular in the Seattle meta. It slows down their ability to dig and gives you a 4/4 body that must be dealt with or you kill them. Containment Priest is a nombo with Vile, but it's so powerful against those Sneak and Show decks and against decks like Elves that it's well worth playing. Strongly recommend having at least one or two in your 75. Council's Judgment is one of those cards where it appears that Wizards is just favoring this deck by putting great answers in. This helps you deal with Planeswalkers, where the deck has traditionally had some problems, and also True Name Nemesis, a creature you just can't target with your removal. Here is my current deck list. It runs a lot of singletons, and I've been switching it around on a weekly basis. The Grafdigger's Cages are currently in there for some local Dredge and Elf matchups. The Revoker has been very strong also. 3 Caverns of Souls is a little bit high for most people, but I like beating blue decks. This is the most interesting creative list that I've seen recently. It won a large legacy event in Asia Pacific. It plays more land, but those land aren't real land, they're really stone rains. Ghost Quarter, in an environment where people usually have 2 or less basic lands, turns into a land that destroys their land for nothing. Very, very powerful card. I also like that they played with the core a little bit in cutting down the Stoneforge Mystics and playing Spirit of the Labyrinths. Very, very good in the current meta. Lots of pros have played this deck. Check out some of the articles by Craig Wesco over on TCG Player if you want to learn more about playing this. Also, Shuhei Nakamura has played this, and Wizards of the Coast has some great coverage up of the last GP Strasbourg, where Jacob Wilson was playing against Thomas Enevoldson. It really shows the power of this deck in those videos. If you like this video, please exile that subscribe button. I would appreciate another follower. We've also got some great stuff coming up in the next few weeks. Thank you to everybody over there on Patreon who's supporting the channel. We have a top 20 list for Green EDH. We're closing out some contests. We're doing a pack opening for Origins, and there's some spots still available on Patreon at the $2 level. And then we have a July speculation and investment video. Those slides are going to be available to patrons first. So for $1, you get access to those slides before anybody else. Thank you, everybody who supports the channel. I greatly appreciate it.